Not okay. Yeah, recording started, right?
Yep.
Okay, so maybe in the interest of time, we'll get started maybe, and then folks could watch the recording. And let me share my screen. Hey guys, sorry, I'm facing an issue. I think I face. Let me just do this. Can you guys hear me now? Hello.
I can see. I can see your screen. Yeah.
I can see the screen and we can hear you. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I think this tab audio thing is weird. I forgot about that. Yeah. Okay, got that resolved. I think we stopped somewhere here. I think we were talking about FIO versions queue policy, and that's what I remember. So maybe we can start from the release artifacts part. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. Please jump in anytime you have.
Yeah. The only thing, Arivant, when I just review, I think I left a comment. Maybe it's worth to discuss. Some of the things that you that we are discussing is all in the context of features. At the moment, we are not tracking any features.
Right, because we are like even before that, right? This is assuming we have a seed and then we all have agreed on the components. Then comes features for those components, because right now we are even before that stage where we are still figuring out what components are. So, yes.
That was my only comment from reading the doc. Is basically that yeah. Right now we are in the incarnation.
Yes. No, yes, totally agreed. Yes, I think this is assuming we know the components and then we are past this early stage that we are in, right? Like after that, whatever these phases will come in. But right now, yeah, you're right. We are a little too early. Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so on the release artifacts side, so basically after every release, we will obviously have a release notes. We need to define a template, or it could just be a blob of everything. Either way, we need to have release notes. The other thing is we need to, like, if we are, let's say we have 1.0.0 Nephew release, then we need to have a bunch of images, right? And they need to be stored somewhere so that folks can pull and start using it, right? So we need to finalize where we are going to host it. Right now, I think Prow, for the POC that we did for Prow, we hosted it in a Linux Foundation GCP project. Now the question is, we could use the same project to host these images, or we need to find a different project. So any thoughts on this?
So Arvind, could you?
I'm losing the audio. Yeah.
Oh, you couldn't
Is it
hear
just me or it's everyone
Could you
else
repeat that, Arvind, please?
Oh yeah, I'm going to repeat. Yeah, you guys can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Arvind, now is.
Yeah. So what I was saying was, as part of release, obviously we will have release notes, but in addition to that, we will, in addition to the documentation, which I've not mentioned here, but we need to have a bunch of images, right? Like let's say you have 1.0.0, you will have NF deploy controller image. Let's say you have package variant controller image and so on, right? And all those images needs to be hosted somewhere, so that like whoever needs to use it can pull from that registry and use it, right? So for the Prow POC that we did, we have a GCP project which is funded by the Linux Foundation, which is where we hosted Prow. Now, for these images, we need to figure out where we want to host it, right? It could be in the same GCP project where we did the Prow POC using, right? That, or we need to find a different hosting project. That's what I said, and I just wanted to know what you guys think.
Yeah, yes, I think whatever the standard LFN release artifact repository, I believe there is one. I think probably we should use that. What the first thing that comes to my mind.
So that is different from this one, right? This is just a GCP project that we created, funded by Linux Foundation.
Yeah.
which is the one we are using for hosting Prow. So one option is to just put the images in that project itself, right? Or we need to find if there is some other better way or standard way of doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. True. I mean, the Pro one, I understand. Arvind. I think I agree with you. I think that's what we needed to do. That's fine. But when we do, let's say, 1.1, 1.2 release, yeah, if there is no other standard way, then probably we can continue to do this, what you're proposing. But I also agree with you when you said that if there is a standard way, we should use that.
Right. Sounds good.
Because I'm pretty sure we are not the first one, and Linux Foundation must have solved this problem.
Right. Yeah. I don't think so either. Yeah, there should be a way.
Yeah. So Stephen, Wim, do you know? Do you guys know? For example, what do they do with ONAP?
Which one? What question?
The Linux Foundation.
The what? The artifacts? Where do
Yeah.
they put it?
Mhm.
Actually, I have no idea.
Do
Too
they
bad Tao's
put,
not here. Tao would have known. Does anyone know?
I have no idea, but do they really deliver containers and all of that stuff, images?
I would imagine. So, yeah, they have ONAP actually. A lot of the their outputs are actually containers. They have like 300 containers or something like that. Yeah.
I thought maybe 10,000.
Not one. So I briefly worked with them when the RFN merge happened. So that was when I know they said we have about 300 containers or something like that. So it's probably a lot more now than 2017. And then, but I would imagine they have some. I don't know actually. Yeah, I remember they have some registry. But then earlier we talked to Lucy last week, and then the account that she gave us for the image registry, which is on Docker, we found that it was still like some free tiers, so it may have flow control issues. But then again, we don't know. So this is more free tiers, like open source tier, open source project tiers that isn't part of the Docker register open source project. So we'll try. So we agree sort of that we'll try. If we have any problem in terms of if a lot of the community members start pulling images and then we have issues, then we'll escalate that to Linux Foundations, and then have them pay for like a real, more professional tier of Docker registry. But then for now, I mean, it's, you know, outside of John complaining, even John's personal one is actually okay. We haven't had any big issues yet.
No.
So,
Docker Hub, I
we can
know
get
that
away.
there's a limit. If you don't pay, it has a limit of how many pools.
Yeah, yes, that there's X number of pool per hour or something like that.
Which is fairly quick, by the way, if you are developing.
That's what I was told. Yeah, so it should be very.
So that's my experience. Is if you are developing ISO, it's really, yeah, it can be annoying.
Let's see if we get to that stage, we'll probably, or we can just kind of kick Lucy and then tell her that can you give her something other than that, but then we haven't actually seen that problem yet. So it's kind of early to just tell her that prematurely. That's an issue.
So are we saying that we can start by hosting in that Docker?
Yeah, let's dump it into that, because you know we pay Linux Foundations and they're supposed to provide this kind of basic infrastructure. So if we have problem, if we encounter a development problem based on what they gave us, then we should escalate it to them.
Okay, and just for the playing devil's advocate, right? Like, what is the benefit of hosting it there versus the GCP project, or is that usually Linux Foundation does it in Docker Hub? Is that why?
So either way, we don't want to pay for it. So if we put it onto GCL and then GCL bill starting to get up, then maybe they will complain.
I see. Okay.
So the idea for us asking for it is the thinking that, you know, it's Linux Foundation, for crying out loud. They should have some sort of arrangement with Docker that would allow us to, as a Linux Foundation project, be able to get at least some sort of, you know, non-free tier level of service, which may not be true actually. We haven't verified anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, because otherwise you're tapping onto Nephew Google account, and then GCR would be charged against that. And then I mean, last time, I mean, Vim can attest to that. Last time we were, I mean, and Bala can too. We were watching how much money they're spending during the workshop. So there is a limit of how much we can charge Nephew also.
Yeah, that's true.
And speaking not as a Googler, Google Cloud's not cheap, so.
No, I mean everything we can get from Linux Foundation should be.
Yeah. I mean, if that becomes a problem, then that's a problem that they should resolve, in my opinion.
Okay, so we'll start with this and then see where it goes, right? Like if we run into issues, then of course we can escalate and get a more professional account.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Anything else on this topic? Now we can move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So on the contribution guidelines, couple of things, right? Like maybe I'll start with this. We need to like define a set of guidelines so that people can follow. All of us can be consistent and follow a given way of contributing code, right? For example, like so let's say for author is like all of us will be new contributors once the repos are in, let's say, and then if there is an author who's a new contributor, they need to follow. We need to prepare a guide, like we need to write it down in the Nephew project repo where before they start contributing, they need to sign CLA agreements, right? And that's one thing that would be part of the steps we describe. And the other one is we need to call out the exact steps that they can do to make a pull request, right? That could be things like, for example, the author creates the PR and then they add the reviewers, approvers. So these adding of reviewers, approvers, we need to automate. Prow can do it for us. So once you create a PR, so each repo will have a owner's file in them, and then that owner's file will contain a list of reviewers and approvers. So the author doesn't necessarily have to go looking, hey, who's the right reviewer, who's the right approver, right? Prow can automate that for us. But in general, the author creates the PR, adds reviewers, approvers, and then but how do we know, right? When author creates the PR, there is no way for us to know if they sign the CLA or not, right? So that's where Prow can also help automate some of that, where Prow can also go and add a CNCL of a label. I think it can do that by checking with GitHub if this author has signed this given CLA, right?
Yeah, I briefly look into the one that they have on Kubernetes. I think they have a plugin, right? The plugin
right,
is
exactly.
to check CLH. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't know exactly how to do that, but yes, they have a plugin, and we should be able to automate Prow to be able to add that label. So then, when time comes to check in, then for a PR to get accepted, we need to describe this in the guidelines also, right? The PR needs to have a LGTM label, which is given by the reviewer, an approve label, which is given by the approver, and then a target milestone. This, I think, SIG Release probably needs to figure out how we can put the target milestone. And then in addition to that, it should have the CNCLFA label. I missed that part. I mentioned it here. Because this guarantees that the user has a CLA already signed, right? So once you have all these labels, then only then the PR will get merged to the main branch or master branch. So these are the steps. I mean, we have to go through this in detail, but I just listed at a high level what we should do at a minimum, right? So these guidelines should be documented in the Nephew project. So this is for any given PR, but enhancements are a bit special, right? Enhancements are any feature which is significant. It's not a bug fix of any sort. So for bug fixes, you could do this, right? You just need to create a PR and you're done. But for enhancements, in addition to a PR, you need to go through this enhancement process, which we'll talk about briefly. So for example, so the balance is we don't want it to be what do you call too much paperwork, right? But we need to have some process, right? So this is a process. Kubernetes has something similar, but it's up to the community to decide at what level of process we need to have, right? So here's what a proposal is, right? Like we could something similar. Kubernetes does something similar. So we can have an enhancement repository a dedicated enhancement repository can be created where we create issues which are enhancements. And so it'll be a very simple template that we need to fill. Like, let's say let's go through the user journey, right? Let's say I want to propose an enhancement from my point of view. So I create this template. I put a PR link. You may not have this at the beginning. Let's say I didn't even start working on it, so that's fine. And then let's say I put my name as the primary contact and responsible SIG. Yes, I'll be part of SIG automation. And let's say I say this is the automation. Let's say I want to make a change to NF deploy controller. So SIG automation will be responsible, right? And I say that I want to target it for 1.1 release. So I fill this template. And then I could also put additional links on detailing the enhancement here. So after I have this enhancement proposal, I file an issue against this enhancement repository. And then I bring it to the attention of the SIG chairs, right? In one of the SIG automation meetings, we kind of discuss this enhancement. Hey, Arvind has this proposal. Maybe I can present a document, whatever. But there will be a artifact the artifact here would be the issue, which is created against enhancement repository. And we'll just talk through that. Like once it's approved by the SIG, then we'll go to the next stage. Like you can create a PR, for example, and then the PR needs to have, probably we need to figure out some label, enhancement approved, or whatever label that we want to add. Once it's approved, then you can submit that, of course, following the other LGTM and review, right? All those things need to happen still. But for the enhancement review, we can have a separate process. And why do we need this process? It's just that we need to have some process in place, because we need to differentiate enhancement from bug fixes. We want to make sure the SIG chairs and the SIG, the responsible SIG has a say in what enhancements goes into NEFIO, right? That's why we will have this process. Yeah, sorry, I'll stop now.
Yeah, Arvind, at this point of time, thanks for separating them into this. Do you mind opening the link that I shared? I mean, I worked with Stephen to put together some document in the beginning.
Absolutely. Yes, I can open that.
It's in the Slack channel.
So let me open this 1 second.
So the reason is we had gathered a few things, very similar things.
Okay.
And then
sorry, give me a second. Did you push it in Slack? Did you ping it in Slack?
Yeah.
No, right?
Yeah, I had pinged on the SIG Release Slack on Friday, I think. I can put it again.
Oh
now.
yeah, found it. Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
You see it?
Yeah, I think it's, did it on Friday? I can put it
Can you
again.
see it? I already shared. Maybe because I was just sharing a tab, you may not be seeing it. Okay, I have to reshare. 1 second, give me 1 second. Sorry, I was sharing tabs and.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I understand. Yeah. The Zoom.
It's a quirk. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you scroll down a little bit there,
yeah.
There here in this particular section, right? So
This one, right?
yeah. So basically, there is
this one.
Yeah, that is the enhancement one. There is one link to the release process enhancements one, and also the contribution cheat sheet that you're talking about. If you click that one, so do we? The question is, it talks about a lot about what we discussed.
Right.
So, and if you see both all of these are a bit elaborate, both for enhancement process and the guide, the PR management, everything, right? So the two things that came to our mind that one of them, do we need to reinvent the wheel? That's one thing. The second thing is, do we just need to follow that? Or do we need to do something in between?
So I can tell you how I'm thinking about it. Like,
Yeah.
no, we should not reinvent the wheel for sure,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That serves no benefit to anyone. At the same time, we because Kubernetes is a large scale project, right? And they have learned a lot of things, and some of this won't be obvious to us. They might have like a very elaborate process which may not be needed for us because we are early stage. So I think the way I'm thinking about it is, okay, let's see what Kubernetes has done, right? And then let's simplify the process for our use case. And then let's start with the simple process first. And then if needed, we can go to the elaborate process. That's how I'm thinking about it.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah. So especially the enhancement one, right? They have their enhancement process is very, what I should say.
Elaborate.
Yeah,
So
very elaborate.
I did look at KEP. I kind of modeled the template based on that. It is similar, but it's just that the only thing we have to take from them is, hey, there is a standard structure for proposing enhancements.
Yeah.
And we take some form of that structure, and we have a repository. And all it is, hey, at the end of the day, it's like you need to create an issue for a enhancement, right? And you use the structure to create an issue. That's all there is. That's one thing we are taking from them. The other thing is, once this issue is created, how is it approved? That's up to us, right? So there, all I'm saying is, if I'm the one proposing the enhancement, I'll just go to the corresponding SIG, let's say SIG automation, and then we talk about it, right? Like, of course, we should ping offline so that people have time to review offline, but we make a decision in the community and we kind of talk through the enhancement. And if it makes sense for this release or the next release, or does it make sense at all, right? So that's a conversation we need to have. And if the chairs approve, the community approves, then we move forward with it, or we drop it.
Yeah. So
That's
true.
all.
Yeah, and for the contribution, exit. I agree for the enhancements for the general contribution guidelines, etc. Since we are also following the path of CLA and other things, probably we can almost take what is there in those guides. Basically, it talks about same thing like very generic PR management process.
Yes.
PR merge branching strategy. Those things are very standardized. Probably we could take it as it is.
Yes,
but I agree with you. For some of the aspects, we can simplify on our case, especially the enhancement one.
Exactly, and even for this, right? Like, it is very elaborate, very thorough, which is great. But we can start with something basic, and then because we want people to get contributing, right? Like if we put too many guardrails and too much process, we don't want that to become an overhead and a deterrent for people to enter and start contributing, right? So we will take this structure probably in the contribution guidelines whenever we write it, but keep it very simple and put minimal guardrails to start contributing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't find anything out of the ordinary in the contribution guides.
Right.
But the enhancements one is very, very kind of, it appeared a bit stringent.
Right.
It talks about prior art and all those kind of stuff, workarounds, possible ways. We don't need to go that way. But the contribution one was kind of, it looks very standardized to me, like general developer etiquettes, and then how you do the PR management, the branching strategy, things like that.
Exactly. Yeah. So we need to someone needs to look at it. So one of the work items is like for somebody to do exactly that, right? So all we are calling out, at least here, is just, sorry, in the doc was, hey, we need to think about this. Now there is a work item for one or two people need to own that work item and go look at the resources like what you pointed to, Bala, and then kind of write it for our use case, nephew. Either copy it if it makes sense, or wherever it doesn't make sense, just make it simpler.
Yeah, agree. Yes. Probably we need to go each one of them and see what works for us. Yeah. Exactly. Initially, I was thinking we are not even doing CLA, but then we started doing CLA. But anyway.
Yes. CLA, I think it's better we do it. Yes. Cool.
That's one thing in this document. Since we are in the document, I also mentioned about the GitHub stuff, which may be the next topic. Probably we can come to this talk after your.
Yes. I'll represent this doc and we can talk about the GitHub also.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Thanks, Arvind. Yeah.
Okay. No, of course. Sorry, I'm going to switch to the other one and then we'll come back, Balal, in a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, Arvind, if you're talking, we're not hearing you.
Yeah, went silent for a long time.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I've been talking for 2 minutes now.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I guessed. So then that's why I intervened.
Oh, this tab audio thing, you have to remember every time to disable it. Otherwise, it doesn't work. My bad. I'm still getting used to this. No, I was just saying this contributing code, like whatever we discussed, makes sense. It's just that the one key thing for us is to make sure we integrate it deeply with Prow, so that all these things happen automatically for us. Addition of labels and things of that nature. Other than that, as part of this work item, we need to document whatever we discussed, as Bala mentioned before. So next is GitHub project management. So we will jump to Bala's doc in a second. I just want to list out a few things that comes to mind. So first thing is for us to figure out repositories, right? One thing looks like all of us agreed is, at least I thought we agreed, is once we have decided the components, each component will be its own repository, right? That agreement we already reached. Is that right? Like even before I joined, I was.
Now that there is a bit of a discussion in the SIG2 in the document of John, where he's proposing to also to split out the APIs from the component itself and leverage some libraries. So that's we have to discuss that, because at the moment in the planning document that John has, there is a discussion on it. I personally believe it's a good idea to split the API, because what I've seen in the code that I did at the time, I see when you work with kept functions and stuff like that, and these injectors and stuff like that, you actually have to consume so basically the same types, but from either from a Go struct or from a YAML struct or from so you have all these combinations. And it's good to basically build a set of libraries around that you can reuse across the board. So that's the only thing I think that we probably need to discuss. I don't know whether we have the right people here on the call to conclude, but that's the only thing.
Yeah, I do want to say that the seed code, I'm working on it right now, is actually a little too many packages.
Okay, so that's also a problem, right? Too many libraries.
No, yeah. So I would think that before we see, we'll probably change that for us. But then there are a lot of packages. So the link paths are all pointing directly into the package, onto a particular Git repo. So that is like the other end of the extreme, which is like every little tiny components and library are stored in the package and could potentially store in your own repo. And then you have all this fully presented path throughout your Go code, which is very ugly.
Okay, so that's the other extreme.
Yeah.
But, okay.
I mean that actually is one of our problem too right now internally, because we need to, some of these we have to like change the path, and obviously we have to change the path in general because they're pointing to internal repos. But then another thing is, hey, do we even need this type stuff? Yeah, or why is there a different package out of this? This is so strange. Yeah.
So can I?
So I would like to not see that really.
But what I'm proposing is basically the API, or what we are discussing is basically splitting the API from the main code. That's it, right? And then just that's the only thing.
That should happen. Yeah. So the CLD should be on a separate place by itself.
So can I ask one question on the API front? I mean, in principle, it looks like a good idea, right? Like having a separate repo for that. But just one follow-up question. So when we say these APIs, right? So one is what is input to NF topology. So that's of course a bunch of CRDs. But between each components, let's say NF topology spits out some CR, which is then consumed by, let's say, package variant controller. Even those intermediate CRs, are we thinking? So both the input CR to NF topology and all the intermediate CR exchange between the components, would all of them be in one repo? Is that the discussion?
See, that's the way we structure it, but somehow we have to define them, right? So they should be, either we have one API repo, like the core repo that Kubernetes has, or you split it in pieces. But for now, I think I would start with a single repo, including the intermediate ones, because okay, to packet variant, it's maybe not as relevant, but if you go to the next stage, there is a bunch of CI. Basically, if you look to the, if you have, let's say, operators or functions operate on the cap package, they have to understand potentially those intermediate CRs.
Right.
Yeah. So the biggest one is the deployments, XXX, the UPF and SMF deployment pieces. Those are needed by both something on a management cluster and the edge cluster.
Yes. So in other words, for example, UPF deployment is a good example, was used across, I used it, so basically I used it in the NF injector, in the IPAM, and in the NAD, in the NF injector. So it was used 3 times.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
And then, for example, I was consuming in the POC even, what did we call cluster context or something we introduced, which was an intermediate one. The IPAMs are all intermediate ones, so they never get applied to the cluster. So I think it's hard to make an exception. I think it's better to say, okay, put them all in one repo, whether they are intermediate or not.
Yes. I mean, that's a
and
good
use it.
starting point, right? It's better than having them in the component repo. And then if we really need to break it down further, we can do that at a later point in time. For now, this seems like a good start.
And then we need to define all the interfaces in those APIs. So we have the Go interface probably, and then the YAML interface. So there is a bunch of things that we have to define on how they get consumed, and then we can basically reuse it across the board.
Makes sense to me. Yep. So I just added it to the list, but it's not decided. But I'm just calling out all the.
Yeah, that's a discussion happening. Is ongoing, or it's a comment in the document. That's why I highlighted it.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, maybe go ahead.
Go ahead, Arvind, after you. Yeah.
Oh no, I was just going to continue this discussion. But yeah, if you have something on this point, yeah, please go ahead, Bala. Finish it.
The question is, obviously my understanding of this entire end-to-end flow is not as good as anybody in this call, but the NF topology API and versus the subsequent ones that happen southbound, the CRs, would they change in lockstep? For example, if one changes, obviously others changes. Is that how the life cycle is going to be?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, no. Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
Because because like for example, NF topology could include, let's say I want to deploy UPF, SMF, AMF, right?
Yeah.
If let's say something within the AMF CR changes, doesn't necessarily mean NF topology has to change, right? Because let's say you added a field in AMF CRD, right? That doesn't mean the NF topology will directly get impacted.
Got it.
It may not be. I'm not saying for sure, but it's hard to define right now. Will it get impacted or not?
Got it. So basically, there is loose coupling. Yeah, got it. It may change. Okay.
It may or may not change. Yeah, that's how I would put it. I don't know, Wim, Steven, if you guys had anything, please go ahead.
Oh, I agree. There is some dependencies and not so, but it's loosely coupled. But there are, in some cases, there will be dependencies. Huh?
Right. Yes.
But there, yeah.
If that's the case, that's where I was going to the common repository thing. Do you would it make sense to have a separate repos, or would you still think all the CRDs in the same repo, even though they have a different life cycle in terms of their versions and in terms of their
the versions are much more controlled by which YAML you're going to use. So the version field is actually in the CL itself. So if your controller can support, if your controller can support multiple API versions, that's much more a problem of your code than the problem of your organization of repo. Because whether or not your controller will support a particular version of the CLD, is your controller's code. It's a little less about which repo you fetch it from.
Plus, most likely when we release, we will probably label them all in one release, right? So they are probably.
Yeah, as Vin said, I think for now, let's put them all there in one, so that it'll be a little easier for whoever writes controller, we go into the same repo to get the v1 alpha 1 or whatever out of that particular repo, so they have the same repo path, and all we have to do is like a standard make file or something that makes sure that you link to make sure you link to that on your go.mod. That probably is pretty awesome in the beginning. So people would be going through the same repo to link their CLDs. Moving forward, if it makes sense for whatever reasons, then we can split it.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool. So let's just quickly run down the list. For SIG release, this is the plan, but again, nothing is set in stone, right? Like we could have a dedicated repo to define all the processes, roles, etc., right? And also another reason this repo will be used for is just before the release, like what we have highlighted here, someone needs to kind of like whoever is the release lead, which we'll talk about in a second, has to establish the timelines, right? Just before the release. Hey, we are starting, by the way, we are starting 1.1.0. These are the expected timelines, because this will help the folks working on the different features, kind of plan their activity, right? Like so all that announcements will be made in this repo, which is something similar to what K8 does as well. And this is owned by SIG Release, right? And all the processes and everything will be defined. Release-related process will be defined in this repo. The other repo is test infra repo. And these are repos we already have, by the way. There's not much information there, but it is at least a placeholder repo is there. Test infra repo is where we put all the test infra-related code and configurations. For example, right now we are running a POC PROW, right? The configuration of the PROW itself is here. And in future, we need to talk about that. We may not have time today, but we need to come up with an integration test bed. And some of the folks in this meeting, or maybe some of them are not here, have already created test beds for our one summit, right? Like we should talk about that and how we can take. There are a few different approaches. Looks like different folks have taken. We need to figure out what is the right approach as a community, and then we need to integrate it with PROW, right? So that integration testbed code can also go in this test infra repo, for example, or any other test infra related code that we create can go here. Enhancement repo, we spoke about it. And then we need to have, I think John has a user docs repo for that, I think. But the idea here is we need to have a repository dedicated for kind of helping people out who are onboarding, right? So one of the hurdles when I spoke to different community members is that, hey, just understanding running these take time. And I know that Wim has an Ansible script which is very helpful, and I know Victor and others also have created scripts, but we need to make sure we put that in one place where people can onboard quickly, right? I think that's a docs repo I think John created, but I just named it tutorial or whatever. And then we need to, okay, this is another question I wanted to resolve. Like, do we want a dedicated repo for each SIG? SIG release, it makes sense to me because we need to define the processes, roles, publish the timelines. So there will be activity in that repo. For SIG automation and SIG org, I don't know. Maybe we don't have SIG org folks here. Maybe for SIG automation, do we think we need a repo? Or is it a little bit?
I would think the code will be the repo, right? So I don't think we need a dedicated repo for us, or at least that's my view. Okay. Because most of our documentation, so at the moment, we are doing mostly on the wiki and on the Google Drives. Right. So the discussion. Okay. Going forward.
Yeah, I mean, so I think a while back, a long time ago in SIG 2, we talked about, hey, let's discuss designs on Google Doc, and then convert that Google Doc into .md files, and then save that onto a release repo where we know that for as a moment of the document of intent and truth, that we know a release contains this feature, and that's the design of that feature. That is very ambitious. And, at this point, we are. I don't know where we are actually in development, but then if we're still writing design doc at this point, it's actually a little late in the game. So I'm not actually even sure where we are at this point.
Yeah, I think at the moment the CRD proposal doc is probably the best we have. At the moment.
Yeah, it's probably
so,
that's our design. Yeah.
But would that not then go into the SIG release?
Yeah,
If we have a
that's the
certain
goal.
release,
That's the goal.
that's
We should make them into MD in format that is better than a regular MD, and then post it on Git repo, because I think we shouldn't have a Google Drive and to look up documents and switch back to repo to
I agree.
what's on SIG, what's on the release. So we should convert them into MD and then post it on SIG release repo would probably be a good place to do. So we have R1, whatever we're gonna name R1. We create a directory under SIG release, and then we'll put all those MD files over a SIG release repo.
Okay, yes.
But I don't think you need a SIG2 repo.
Okay, no, I didn't think so.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of components repo. SIG1 should generate some sort of requirement docs repo, but so far they're also on Google Drive, and I don't think SIG1 people aren't the people who are going to convert. They're not the MD writing people, I don't think. So.
Okay, so I'll just talk about for each release.
Not looking down on them, but it doesn't seem like they're like developers.
The other thing that we are at the moment, okay, I'm tracking at the moment a bit in the PowerPoint. So like we are making assumptions on things, right? This should be part of the SIG release as well, I think, right? So it's not only architect. For example, we say we prioritize shift left for now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably also a decision. We have to document it somewhere, I think, because right now we are discussing in 1 month, everybody forgot about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
regarding that point, right, that you just noted down, Arvind, I was thinking the same thing for each release, right? So, I mean, couple of ideas coming into my mind. One is like just like what you wrote, a release folder in the SIG release repo.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is, should we have a dedicated repo for the release artifacts? In the sense that, when it comes to the SIG automation, which is actually delivering the code and the artifact side, there are multiple repos. For example, the APIs will have a repo, and then we'll have different repos for UPFs, SMFs, and then obviously the topology controller. And so what I'm trying to say is all the controller will be in their own repo. So if somebody wants to consume it, and one of John's idea was to create kind of a integration kind of a controller, a master controller. He used a different word. I'm using a different word that combines all this, for example, all the 5 GC components, and then installs them together along with the other required controllers, the infrastructure controllers from the NFU. So along those lines, should we create a separate repo for the releasable artifacts, which includes that master controller along with the relevant documentation and everything, so that users can consume that repo to just install and deploy NFU?
So just trying to just one question to get clarity on what you're saying, Bala, is like as part of release, right? Like my understanding is, let's say we have the Docker hub that Steven mentioned earlier, right?
Yeah.
Let's say we set that up. So let's just take this example, right? Let's say we have enough deploy controller Docker image, we have package variant controller Docker image, and just a few other components Docker image. All of that will be published. Let's say as part of R1 release, Docker hub links will be provided for each of those images, right? And let's say in this release folder, as part of release notes or somewhere, we say that, hey, these are the images for this release, and you can go find it there, right? So you get the.
I mean, it should be better than that, right? We should have some sort of installation scripts or whatever that would directly pull just that version, and then you only build it this way, right? I mean, we are not going to test across different versions. So the Porsche, there would be a fixed Porsche version, there'd be a fixed Porsche controller, related controller versions, and we should document that, obviously. But then we should also give them an installation. Obviously, people may install on their own way too, which probably isn't likely on that one, but still in the future. They may do that too. But then so we should A, document, and B, provide a sample installation script
Right.
that would lock them down to a particular version that we tested.
No, I
Yes.
totally agree. I think there are two things at play here. One is like if somebody wants to piecemeal find an image, how do they find it? Which is if you have the Docker link, then you can go find that image. But the second question is, as you guys are saying, if you want to like kind of test R1 release, then you need to have a bunch of scripts which goes and installs the right dependencies and sets up your environment, right? That is one thing. And for that, what we are thinking is that's part of setting up the test bed, right? You need a test bed with a cluster and install all the. Is that what you're alluding to, Bala, or something else?
See, there are dual use cases. One is obviously the test bed, and also I'm viewing that as an end user consumable piece also. For example, somebody wants to, some end user just wants to deploy an FAO, and then let's say they are not advanced and they do not want to do the piecemeal approach, like you said, Erwin. They should be able to do that also. So basically, there are dual use cases. One is internally, like you said, for our own testing. The other one is the end user could also benefit from that.
So I see. So for that, again, this is my thought process. I'm not saying this is how we should do it. Like some of the things here, or some repo, right? If I ignore the name, some repo should document all this. Like if I want to install an FAO, how do I do it? Like what are the scripts I need to use? And then the only thing the user needs to do is customize some of the, let's say, just customize the versions, and then all the magic should happen, right? Like that needs to be documented somewhere. I agree there. And that could be part of some repo, which is the docs repo that I think someone created, John created. We can probably use that repo to do two things. One, introduce people to the concepts, FAO concepts. And two is if I want to quickly play with it, what script do I run, right? So those two can be documented there. I don't know if that is what you're thinking also.
So I'm. It's very close, but slightly different. Maybe we are talking about the same thing, maybe in a different way. I was thinking like somebody going to repo and then he will download. Let's say he'll take that 1.0 branch. Let's say you have 1.0 branch, and that there will be installation script in that branch, and then he'll just run that thing pointing to a Kubernetes cluster, and he has his deployment.
I see. I think I agree. That's what I'm saying as well. Yep. Something similar. Yep. It's just that we need to figure out where that we need to host that.
But based on my experience, Arvind, I tell you, tutorials would be a bad place based on my experience, because pretty soon that gets anything that says tutorials will be deprioritized from a development angle perspective, because I've done this. We did this in ODL days, and then tutorial.
So what is your proposal, Bala? Like what would that repo be?
So two things. One is just like you did, right? For the SIG release, right? We could do that. Your second bullet point, right? We could take that approach. Then we could. That's what user would consume. But if you think that is another approach is just a dedicated repo for
onboarding, basically anytime.
Documentation.
But open source. What open source people call is getting started, right? So getting started, is that what you're saying, Bella?
Yeah, onboarding, getting started. Yeah.
Exactly.
So most people, when you go to the website, you have a getting started thing. That's what you are talking about. So that's maybe what we should call this, right? It's rather than tutorial, say, getting started or something like that.
Yep. I agree. I mean, yes, tutorials is a bad naming. Yeah. So getting started, where you will have a quick way to onboard to FAO and try it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. So that's a better name. I agree. So what were we? Okay, so in test infra repo we spoke about, enhancement repo we spoke about, everything we spoke about already. Okay, so one thing I wanted to understand was mostly a question. Let's say you have some so we have PRs, of course, but there are also other things which are investigative, right? Let's say someone needs to go debug an issue which is between NF deploy controller and package variant controller, and they need to figure out what's going on, right? That's like a debugging issue, right? So where would you file that issue? Because it may not be package variant controller or NF deploy, right? It could be somewhere in between. So it's more like a triage thing. Hey, I have a bug. How do I triage, right? Maybe Bala's doc answers this. But yeah.
But should that not be on the release? So don't we have a project release? Can we not file a bug on the project release repo?
I see. So what you're thinking is, let's say we have v1.0.0 release, and then let's say somebody tested, they found an issue. They don't know what the issue is. They just know there is an issue.
Yeah.
They put on SIG Release repo itself.
Yeah.
And we can triage from there. Okay, yeah, we could do that. And then, but we need to figure out a way to tag them correctly, because it could be a SIG automation thing, because there could be
for sure. Yeah.
We can use
So it has to be assigned. It has to be assigned then to the proper people. But probably the person who files it has no ID, right?
Yeah, we could use labels actually.
Right.
We could create labels for each SIG, and we could assign issues with that SIG.
So, but where will that issue be filed? So like to Wim's point, do they file it? Because let's say I'm testing Nephew 1.0.0. I just pulled it out and I found an issue. Now I need to go file, right? File an issue. Where do I file it? Is that with SIG release, and then we tag it accordingly with the component name or the SIG name? Is that how we do it?
That's the easiest thing I can think of, Arvind. Easiest thing is we have one common backlog, and then that is a single source of truth of all the work. Obviously, when I say single, obviously enhancement repo is there for enhancements, and then once it gets approved, once we create stories and tasks, and we create a single backlog, and then that is a single source of truth. Anybody is, and then obviously that will be tagged with which SIG is responsible for what, and what is the targeted release, and who is it assigned to, things like that. So that is if you do that, the advantage is that everybody will know what anything that is going on that is slated for a release, or what is slated for next release. Everything is in one place. It's kind of easy that way. But the con would be, if at all we grow as a developer community, management of everything in one single thing may be slightly tricky. Probably we can start there and then take it as we face the scalability issue. That is one approach I can think of.
Yeah. But Bala, is it not like this that I see two scenarios, right? One is the person sees a problem, but he has no clue how the architecture is, and he just files it to SIG release.
Yes.
There will be other people who understand the nitty-gritty details, and they can point to the repo where the problem is. So they file it. So they file it to the respective repo. So we should allow for both, in my view.
Yep. So I think the way we can merge these two is using tag, right? Let's say a person who in Wim's example, if I don't know anything about this, I just file it against SIG release. I just tag it using 1.0.0 because that's the Nephew release. And then let's say someone else files a bug and they know that it's NF deploy controller issue. They'll go to NF deploy component and file an issue, but they'll also tag with 1.0.release. Then if we need to run a query to figure out, hey, what are the bugs in 1.0.0, we can run a query by pulling using the tag. Right?
And also I think we can link issues. This links to this, something like that.
Right.
Or this is same as that, something. I think there are ways to do it in GitHub Issues. Then
in the project, I think you can do. I'm not familiar, but maybe in a project you can probably do, because we're all in the same project, right? So I don't know. I mean, we have to find out.
I see. So I'm just documenting this, right? So any bug that is found on a given Nephew release, if component isn't clear, can be filed against SIG release repo with appropriate tags.
Yeah.
But if the component is clear, then
outside people would probably file bugs against the fact that Nephew doesn't work.
Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, that's how at least a lot of I expect a lot of
that is one
you have to reduce that.
That is one common problem. The other problem is that, let's say even the feature, right? Let's do feature. I mean, even us, and let's say it spans across the SIGs. Let's say let's forget SIG 1 for a bit now. SIG 2 and SIG 3. So some work items are in SIG 2.
But I had it already, right? There is people who have been trying to install and run against an issue. You have to figure out where this problem is, and it's not obvious for people to say, is it in the Ansible script? Is it in which controller is it? it happens today.
I mean,
And so then we have to figure out, you have to have common sense. So it starts, so someone gets the issue, or maybe a set of people gets the issue, and then we have to, as a community, try to figure out what is the root cause of this somehow, right? And help each
and
other.
probably one issue will result in issues in multiple SIGs. That's where I was going to.
Could be, yeah, could be.
And multiple repos. So that's also again, we need to figure out, once that happens, we need to figure out when the parent issue gets closed. That means for that to happen, for all the individual components, issues should be closed. I think GitHub, there is, I don't know how it's going to work across projects, but if it's a single project, the new GitHub issues lets us subtask a particular issue. It gives us that ability, but I don't know how it works across the project, but we'll figure it out, Arvind, I think, as we go.
Yeah, this is not a problem. Yeah, we just have to start in one place and then we'll adapt. That's totally okay. I really wanted to get to the infrastructure part because this is where all of us need to do a lot of work, but clearly we are out of time. Is it okay if we go over by 5-10 minutes, or how is people's schedule looking like? Because I don't want to have one more meeting, so we could.
We have another meeting on Monday.
Right. No, what I meant is I wanted to go to this place where we identified owners, or at least start creating.
Well, I mean, we don't have enough people to get all the owners today. Anyway.
Right. But I want to make sure we at least cover this infrastructure. Is it okay if we go over 10 minutes, or do you guys think we should do it on Monday? I'm okay either way, but just.
I'm okay.
I'm fine.
Okay. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Okay. Then great. We can just finish this in 10 minutes. Shouldn't take more than that. So test infrastructure, we need a very good one. That's goes without saying, right? So as I mentioned before, we can host all the configuration test infrastructure related code in this repo. So when I say test infrastructure, there are a few different pieces, right? Like one is PRAO. Like some of us need to become very familiar with PRAO. I'm no expert, right? But we need to work towards having some familiarity. So because we need to maintain our own infrastructure right now, whatever we have set up for POC is just a POC version, right? I wouldn't say it's production ready. So we have hosted it on the Nefio GCP project, as I mentioned earlier, and we already have a domain, right? At least it works at a high level. So that's the PRAO part of it, and PRAO also has another component called Tide. I think we showed it in the demo in a couple of meetings back. Is that it'll automatically merge the PRs to the main branch once all the labels are met, right? The author need not be manually doing it. Like they just submit, and then if they address the review comments, and then not worry about merging it. Because whenever the labels are ready, it'll automatically merge, right? We need to configure this. Right now it's configured, but in a very amateurish way. We need to go and check if it's doing the right thing, right? The other important piece, this is optional, but this is very important. I feel in the
can we in Tide, can we say we need at least minimum 2 LGTMs like that?
Yeah, we could say that. Yes, that's up to us. So for now, I've just said that like for every repo, there will be a list of approvers and there will be a list of reviewers, right? So you need to, let's say, for example, Bala, you're the approver for one repo. There could be a bunch of reviewers. So you need an LGTM from one of those reviewers, but you also need to approve because you're the approver of that repo. So in a sense, it's 2 LGTMs, if you will, right?
Okay, got it. Yes,
yeah. So approver is typically an expert of that. I mean, he's the owner or lister, one of the owners of that repo, and he's like the subject matter expert. Reviewers are someone who are very familiar, but they review code and make sure code quality and things of that nature. That's the idea, at least. So test grid is basically a place where we can easily access the results, right? Like if you look at K8s, this is like what they have, right? Kubernetes has a test grid setup. And if you see for each component, this is very scary. When you look at it, there's a lot of clutter. But if you look at it, they could set up a test grid for a given repo, right? And you will see something like this. Let's say you have a bunch of tests written. Over time, you can see what happened to those tests. For now, everything is like passing, right? But if it fails, you will see a lot of red. And then you can go and debug. And then it's helpful because you can see, oh, yesterday it was failing. Now it's passing. Okay, what happened? What are the issues that went in between? Oh, okay, it got fixed, right? And it is very important. This is useful for deflaking because let's face it, tests become flaky over time, right? We need to deflake it. Now you can go look at this to understand, okay, how good the tests have been behaving, right? You'll get a sense of like a zoomed out view, if you will. But we don't need this right away. But this is something, it's best practice. We set it up. So that is test grid. So this is the part I wanted to spend some time, right? Like, so for tests, there are a few different types, right? Like, let's say when we, for all the repos, right, we will have unit testing, of course, and the unit testing will be automatic. We should configure prow by writing prow jobs so that these unit tests are automatically invoked. Like in one of the demos we showed, right? Like where we had a math go file. It had add and subtract, and we created unit tests for validating those. And if one of them breaks, we'll catch it, right? We showed that demo. So that's with prow, right? Something similar, we need to write prow jobs for each of the unit tests. If it breaks, then we can catch it easily. And then the compute environment for this unit test will be in the prow infrastructure, right? Of course, you can run it in your local environment, but I'm talking about the CI/CD pipeline, which will periodically check. Actually, not even periodically. For every PR that is ready, unit test will be run by the CI/CD pipeline, and it will flag those errors, right? So that is one part, which is fine. That part is relatively easier. Once you have unit test ready, we can just call it from prow, right? That part is easy. But the other part, which is what I wanted to discuss about, is the integration test. Like you have NF deploy controller, package variant controller, and other components, right? All of these needs to be set up in a test bed, similar to how we did in OneSummit. And there are two things here. One is setting up that environment, and two is executing tests on that environment, right? The setting up that environment can be like a one-time thing where we set it up and then we don't tear it down often. And then we have prow, which periodically, let's say every 2 hours, takes the current version of software, deploys it in that test environment, and runs some integration tests against it, integration or system test, right, against it. So that we need to build because that's super critical. For that, now there are two questions, right? Integrating with prow is one part, but the other part is what is the test environment that we are talking about? Is it something similar to what we did for the OneSummit, or like what exactly is it, right? So that is a separate work item that we need to identify a group of owners, maybe, because it's a big ticket work item. And then we need
it could be a subset, by the way. So what I do always before I did the Ansible, because a lot of our testing at the moment, or a lot of our work happens at the management cluster, right? Which means that you actually only need a subset of that whole infrastructure that we are creating to be able to test that. So for example, so I did that in the beginning because mostly I was working on the management cluster, right? So as a result, I only created one cluster, no networking, nothing. So it was a very simplified flavor of it. Right. And what I did is I just tested the workflow in order to, and what I tested was basically see whether the content in these repos was right. And from the moment that is okay, I was okay, right? So as such, depending on what type of environment you are or what type of thing you're interested in, you could actually have a subset of that big environment on which we did a full demo. Used, and as a result consumed way less resources to do so.
Right. So yeah, I agree. Like there are two things here. One is if I want to onboard to Nefio, then let's say now I want to just play with Nefio, then I need an integration test bed that I can set up using some guidelines that we say in getting started, right, in that repo. Yeah, and I can set up my own repo, use those Ansible scripts or something. That's one part of it. The other part of it is we need an integration test bed for the CI/CD pipeline to run integration tests. That is the one I'm talking about. For that one, the integration test would be something like this in my mind. So we create an NF topology CRD, and then we apply it to the cluster. And then I want to see the output happen, which is UPF deployment is getting created, right? That would be for example, one set of integration tests. Right. And there could be other, which is a little bit more involved. Is it actually getting deployed to the workload cluster? We might want to verify that. So things like that is what would go in integration. And for that, we need to have a very reliable test bed, right? And preferably networking should work. But Yeah, so we need to start somewhere. So this is where I think there is a good amount.
But don't we have that? Don't we have that at the moment? So the full blown we have, I think. What we don't have is the subset.
Right. So the full blown one, I was just talking to John and Stephen the other day. I heard that there are few variations of it. I think different members in the community had created different versions of it. Do we know which one is like the gold standard that we need to adopt for this, or is that TBD? Because I heard.
So at the moment of, okay, so there is, I think there is basically two probably, right? There is the thing that I think Victor started upon, and then there is the Ansible part, right?
Right.
Those are the two that you have. So one is basically, but I'm not sure how evolved the one that Victor did is, because for example, I added this whole networking stack into the Ansible one. We can also add it to Victor's one, not a problem. But so the whole interconnectivity of all the clusters and creating this interworking, I don't think is there at the moment.
In either of them, right? The networking part.
No, it is in the Ansible one.
Okay, I see. So you're meaning the other one doesn't have the interconnectivity. I see.
But I think we have to discuss with Victor. We have to decide which way you want to go.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the decision we have to make. Looks like Victor has.
Yeah, I'm here.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, maybe we can discuss later. But yeah, that's a good point.
So how about this, right? Like, I don't know whether it's an ad hoc meeting, just some of us huddle, or it could also be in the next SIG release. We can kind of double click on this topic. Offline, what we could do is we could just list down all the different variations, and then that could be a topic we discuss in one of the SIG release, because I think other community members would also want to weigh in, right?
I think fish is also important in this discussion, I guess.
Right. Yeah. So maybe we could use one of the SIG release meetings to kind of double click and deep dive. But that's just the discussion, right? But the work needs to happen. So maybe if we have a few folks who are interested, we can form like a team and kind of work on it offline.
Yep, agree.
Makes sense.
So maybe what I will do is I'll help coordinate this at least. Maybe in the next SIG release we can. So Victor, maybe I'll work with Wim and you to kind of come up with a doc. Nothing detailed, but just to list down the different options that we have already, and then you guys can bring it up in the next SIG release and discuss it.
Yeah, sounds good. Just one comment. Next Monday is a holiday here in US. Just to keep in mind.
Oh yes, okay. I forgot about that. Yeah, that is true. Okay, so we cannot do it next Monday then.
Yeah, that is a good point. Completely forgot about it.
So,
Yes,
guys, I don't have a holiday.
just Vim then.
Yeah, but I will be in the US next week. Yeah, so
you guys have holiday in Google next Monday?
Yeah, we do actually. Yes, we do indeed.
Oh,
apparently
man.
Samsung too for Victor. So
yeah,
lucky you guys.
So what happens to Red Hat? What is wrong with Red Hat?
Oh, man.
Oh, IBM. I don't know who to blame here, but anyway.
Exactly. Victor, I think Samsung also gives, oh man. Not good, man.
Yeah, happy to celebrate every single holiday.
Yeah. Well, by the way, in the month of October, November, you should be in Israel. The whole month is holiday.
Okay, cool. So yeah, that's a bummer. But I'm happy about the leave. I'm not complaining.
We can also do an ad hoc meeting. I think the only other person that you probably, we can do it in the community meeting either. Yeah.
So maybe we can work offline on the doc with just some minimal. It's like a one pager with some minimal details. We can just use that as a discussion point for whenever the next SIG release happens, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay.
One point on that, Arvind, I was thinking. I know we are running much over here. So there's the different things, right? One is the integration test and also the system test when everything. I think we are using them synonymous.
Yes, I'm using synonymous
here. So that's okay. And the other thing is what we need to, how much to what depth we need to go is something also we need to figure out. Whether do we need to just install this, or just deploy the components and see the parts come up, and obviously the communication between them, or do we need to set up something like a UE ransom or simran, whatever the name is?
I mean, that's a very good question, right?
Call. Yeah.
No, that's a very fair point. Very good question. So the way I'm thinking about it is, let's just maybe write down the integration test that we want to do, right?
Yeah.
And then from that we will know what test bed we want, because
Exactly.
the integration
I think
test,
we have to because in use case 1 we already said in our SIG meeting that we wanted to validate traffic and session setup, so we have to be able to do something like that
exactly, right?
for use
Like,
case 1.
Yep. And we are also talking about upgrade capacity and other things, right? User journeys. So depending on, so integration test would be like a mimic of the different user journeys, right? Like that we want to cover for R1. So based on the combination of user journey and what integration test we are writing, we'll figure out what test bed setup we want. But for that, we need that, we need to write down the integration test, and then we'll decide.
Yeah.
At the moment we go as far as deploy, but even the deploy is stuck at the moment, right? There is we have to fix this permission issue.
Right. Yeah.
But so yeah, so at the moment we have gone as far as getting this thing running, or almost. It runs. It supposedly runs, but it doesn't really run.
Okay. Cool.
I mean.
Go ahead.
Kubernetes is happy with it, but at the end, the function is not yet happy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we run an integration test, it'll fail, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So we need to. Yeah, I really think we have to come up with a list of integration tests that will really tell us what sort of, how complicated of an environment we need, because without that, it's kind of hard to judge, right? To Bala's point.
Yeah. To what depth we need to go. Yeah.
Exactly, right. So yeah, so let's work on that is another work item, right? This is the last one, I promise. So we need to come up with like clear role, R&R's roles and responsibilities, right? Like for Nefio in general, but here I'm just, because it's SIG release, I'm focusing on the SIG release process, right? Like who will figure out all this? Whatever I was just saying, the release process, we need to have a release lead role. It need not be one person. It could be a couple of people.
This lead team, I think, with a leader and then a team. I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and then we need to clearly define what those responsibilities are, and that's a rotation, right? Like every minor release, it will be a team who rotates. Yes. And we need to have shadow process and everything. But yeah, I think once a group of people do one release, then they can continue the baton and kind of hand off the baton and train other people. But that's a rotation. So this is just stating some obvious. Yeah.
But this may be a good thing to discuss at the TSC on how we do that, right? I think there's a TSC this week, right? Maybe we should bring this up.
So help me understand, Wim. So we need to involve TSC in how the release cadence will be. No, not cadence. On two things, right? Like one is release cadence. Like here we are proposing 3 months.
The cadence we have to have TSC involved, in my view, right?
Right.
Here, what we are discussing, who should drive the lead? Is it which? Do they assign a different people? Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I think the one that Arvind is defining, I think we have the freedom. That's what I feel.
The release lead. So the question then we have to decide.
We need to change the baton's responsibilities, right? I think each SIGs can their own make determination. I don't.
Yeah, but for example, for the release leads, do we want to have an appointment? Then we appoint. Is it a SIG release problem or is it a SIG automation problem?
SIG release problem, in my opinion. At least that's how I was. Because it's basically coordination, right? Like, so these are the responsibilities. Yes. We will look at that, then it will become clear, I think. So coordinate with other SIG on finalizing the issues, right? So each SIG have their own chairs, right? So this person or a group of people will, let's say for SIG automation, let's say Wim, you're the chair, right? So let's say this person comes to you and say, hey Wim, for 1.0.0, what are the issues that you want to target? So then you sit together with the SIG release lead and look at all the issues. Yeah. And then say, hey, these are the things which are super critical. So let's put it in 1.0.0. So that conversation needs to happen between the chair of that SIG and this person, right? And then this person needs to be like very involved, right? They need to make sure they poke the right people and get the job done, right? Like you need to kind of enforce all this, right? These phases we are saying, hey, code freeze, this person needs to enforce it, right? And after the release is done, cut the branch, all that needs to be this release leads or a group of people's role. That's the second responsibility. The third responsibility will be like, this is very important, is the postmortem of the release. Like after the release is done, kind of discuss and try to improve the process constantly, right? And the other important role of this person is, hey, identify the next release lead by working with SIG Release.
But so should we do this already for release 1? That was actually my question a little bit. Should we target this?
Yeah, in my opinion, we should do it, because otherwise it's like a great release 1 is the first thing we are doing, right? We will learn a lot about how we as a community together. We can try it. I mean, it need not be perfect the first time, but we can try it, in my opinion.
No, I think it's a good idea. I like it. So the question is then, how do we assign that person?
Yeah. So for now, it'll be some of us, right? Like initially, it's just that like I could be one of the people in this, and then we can find few other people. And then, I mean, I don't know, we can just ping in the SIG. Like maybe what we can do is one of the SIG release meetings, we can ask for volunteers, right? I'm sure some folks will be interested in this, to help out, right? For the first release, I expect this to be like a heavy role, but I think as we move along, it will become an important role, right?
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I think some of us can just volunteer and help out for the first one, and then we can help. Basically, the first release, we will just help define the process so that the subsequent.
Yeah. I can work with you, Arvind, on that one. I can volunteer.
Okay, appreciate that, Bala. Great. So this one, okay. So basically, please review offline, and if you like someone is interested here, I'll also tell the community members, if they are interested, just put your name here, if you will. We will also translate. We should also translate these into actual issues. So I don't know. I know Bala had an idea on the GitHub project management stuff. Sorry, Bala, we couldn't get to it. So one thing maybe we could do, I'm just asking, is translate this or some version of this into GitHub issues and create issues against SIG release, for example, and create a project board. That way, it's two things, right? We can show how GitHub project management can be done using real issues.
We are doing something similar, by the way, for SIG Release 1. There is a project board in GitHub, by the way, which with John set up. And I'm checking my issues that I have or the things that I'm working on onto that board.
I see. Okay. Yeah, we should do something similar.
So we have
probably.
I think.
Yeah, probably I can take the similar thing. Arvind, I can probably take a stab at it in our SIG release, create some of these issues and create a board and see how it looks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, please do. I mean, you could translate each of the one into an issue, and then I think we already have a repo, right? We can just. So you're saying that we will create a project board here somewhere?
Yes. I'll just create an issue and create a project board and see how it looks.
Yeah. If we have
the project board. The project board is in the project itself. I have the feeling for that John created, not?
Yeah, that is one. But I think what Arvind is talking about is this specific work items for the SIG release. He wants a simple board in SIG release repo.
That's fine. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah. Okay. He's talking about, he wants a similar board in this one. I'll take a stab. It may be Arvind, just to set the expectation. If I may make some mistakes, that's okay, I guess. But I will set it up.
No, this is great. I mean, because I think Bala, you have your other doc, right? What we could do is we could use this as like a proof of concept, right? And then you can side by side talk about your presentation, talk about your doc, and like how you have incorporated whatever you're proposing by creating these issues, right?
Yeah.
So that would be very helpful, I think. Yeah,
we could do that. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And then I think once we have the issues, I'm hoping people will start signing up for some of these. And we should talk about each of these items in SIG release meeting also, so that people know what it is and they can sign up.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think this was a very useful meeting. Thank you, guys. Thank you for all the input. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
And sorry, at the top of the doc, please add your name. I'll add a contributor section. So please feel free to add your name as well.
okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Balaji,
great job.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Arvind. Thanks for leading this. Really appreciate it.
No, of course, yeah. And Balab, feel free to edit the doc. I'll give you, I mean, if you want to add some Git project management, double click on that aspect, please feel free to add.
Okay, I'll do that. Yeah, we'll take a stab. Then we can make it more concrete through discussions. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, sounds good to me. Yep. Thank you guys. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Okay.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
See you.